welcome back to the New Legend Podcast. Today is a very special episode. A friend that I've been wanting to have on the show for like since we started, really.
Oh, thanks.
So Manny, welcome to the show. I'm here with Manny Gage.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Manny is Scout 800?
At Scout 800 on Instagram, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
And we'll talk about that. But thanks for being on the show. We're actually here. Tell us where we are.
So we're actually at, this is, you texted me on Sunday, or was it over the weekend? We're like, I'm going to be down in Jacksonville. I live in Southeast Georgia, and it's like, let's get together. Maybe we shoot the podcast. And so I try to think of a cool spot to go, and this is one of my buddy Kevin Coyle's brewery. I was like, this would be kind of a cool background to have. It's called Silver Bluff Brewery. It just opened about almost a year ago now.
Yeah.
He's been super successful. The beer's delicious. So.
And what town is Brunswick?
Brunswick, Georgia. Yep.
So what's rad is like we've done a lot of like one thing for those of you guys and gals that listen regularly. One commitment I made when I started the show is I don't really want to do like remote episodes.
Yeah.
Which I'm gonna crack because I have like an author of a book that said he'll only do it remote, so I might break the principle. But generally, I really value face-to-face conversation and in-context conversation. So we're here in Georgia, man. It's our first time in Georgia.
Cheers, yeah.
First time in a brewery.
Yep.
And first time with you. So we have a lot to talk about. And as we were kind of hanging out a little bit before the show.
We were trying not to use up all the good discussions beforehand.
We're like, let's not talk about that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll bounce everywhere and feel free to talk about whatever you want to talk about. Right, Manny is an interesting guy, and I want to get your perspective because it's so sure we talk about vintage 4x4s, family culture, adventure, being a man in the 21st century, but Manny is a doctor, and so
somehow,
yeah, so we're able to like indulge some questions that I have about the way the medical system works. We won't go crazy on that, but it's like, when else do you get an opportunity to get behind the scenes?
And I'm happy, especially with what's going on in the country now. Like, hopefully we're at the tail end of this COVID pandemic, but a lot of people have questions like, what do you think in terms of the medical community? Yeah. What's the background information on it too? Yeah. So
sorry about the noise. We're in a brewery.
Yeah.
It's like
they're still brewing beer.
Yeah, it's real time. So let's be sensitive to the chronology of a conversation.
Yeah.
So give us a little bit like your scout. You have two scouts.
I do.
And give us a little bit of the Manny and Scout origin story.
Yeah. So about probably 4 or 5 years ago, I started looking at, and I was trying to decide, do I want to get an old vintage 4x4? And I looked at all like your usual candidates like Broncos, K5s, FJs, and I did not know anything about Scouts. So like a lot of the people who have stories that my dad had a Scout, my grandpa had a Scout, I remember riding that I did not have that. Like my parents are from Europe, so from Romania. So when on eBay one night, I came across a Scout. It's the one that I actually ended up buying.
Really?
And it was the first one that my wife loved it.
Okay.
So she was like, go ahead and buy it.
This is your Scout 800.
That's my Scout 800. So I was looking at, it's a 68 Scout 800. It's like a tan, desert tan type color. And it had like a really cool interior. And so I bought it. Sight unseen. I didn't know much about Scouts. Interesting story, I did not know how to drive a manual, and it's a manual.
That's
so
awesome.
The first time, if you remember, there's a causeway to get on our island. It's about a 4 or 5 mile road, and that's the only way to get on the island that I live on. And I had to make it across and up the bridge.
It got delivered not onto the island.
No, because he was like, I can't get off the island.
That's hilarious.
So I had to drive it across. So I was watching YouTube videos the night before on how to drive a manual.
That's awesome.
There was like some 16-year-old kid in like this old beat-up 80s pickup
Isn't that
truck.
amazing? Like the resource that YouTube is.
Definitely. I mean, I watch it for all kinds of things, but definitely for the truck world. Like, if something's broke, I'll go on YouTube, or like I'll actually ask Dan from Binder Boneyard a lot of times, especially when I first got my truck. Shout out to you, Dan. Thanks for your help. I used to always message him like, it's making this sound. Like, what is this? What's wrong with it?
Yeah,
So
you're like friendly guidance counselor. Yep. That's awesome. So you got the Scout 800, and then this is a debatable question because I'll get depends on what angle you come from. But how long did you have it before you started having any issues with it?
Probably like 2 months.
Okay.
I mean, it was good right off the bat, and then I ran out of gas. Actually, that was the first week, and that's when I learned that Scout fuel gauges do not work.
Yes.
So you cannot rely on it. You got to go by the mileage.
And on your 800, it should have like the fuel selector switch. Does it?
It does, but
does.
only one tank was running. So as soon as I ran out of gas the first time, the first upgrade I did was get the second tank hooked up.
Yeah.
And got the fuel selector put in. I got that from IH Parts America.
Yeah.
I got it all hooked up. So that saved me, and I still ran out of gas a couple times.
Because that's my, I have no gas gauge, no fuel gauge in my Scout 800.
Oh, no.
But like I have a proven system, and when people borrow it, so like I run it on the left tank, and I finally have 2 good filler necks, because even though I own a Scout company, I've like never had good filler necks. So I run on the left tank with the right tank. I fill up both tanks. You have to be disciplined enough to go, because it's annoying to like reposition at the pump to fill up both tanks, because the filler necks are on each side, and modern like hoses don't reach typically.
No. I'd fill on one side, and then I'd have to go get in the car, drive it around.
Yeah, so you got
to the other side.
you have to embrace that discipline. Yeah. So you fill both. The second one runs empty. You run it till it's empty, switch it, and then go fill the left tank.
Gotcha.
So that's how you've never run out of gas.
Yeah. See, I used to look at it and say, as soon as it got to half, I'd flip tanks. And then as soon as that got close to half, I was like, at least I got a few miles to get to the station.
It's too hard to know.
It didn't work.
It doesn't work.
My wife, after a while, was like, I'm so tired of picking you up.
But yeah, one of these days I'll share this as probably like a YouTube video. But about 3 or 4 years ago, I came up with this. It's probably relative for all vintage 4x4s, but this Scout community and ownership funnel that goes from like the aspirationals, the top line of the funnel. It's the largest opening of the funnel, and that's like the Instagram kind of community where you're just like, that's the person that just goes, I just think old Scouts are cool.
They just follow
and they probably
along.
follow Bronco people and FJ people and all kinds of people. And they know about Facebook and Instagram. Then the next level down, it comes into like, now I want to buy one.
Yeah.
So it's like eBay, Worldwide Vintage Auto, like all like those kind of like
on Colorado,
like a lot of flippers, like
Craigslist.
You haven't discovered any brand. You have no brand loyalty to like a Scout company. But anyway, and one of the things that is on this chart is at that phase, you discover that reality didn't match your dreams of your aspirations.
Correct.
Because you just have these visions of like, I'm gonna be a rugged dude, like just cruising around.
I'm gonna start camping. I've never camped before.
And then you start running out of gas, and the carburetor floods out.
Upset, and then
battery dies.
I made really good friends with tow truck driver, so like he knows me, and he's like, "Manny, what's up?"
What's up?
He's like, "Broke down again?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Where are you at?" I was like, "I'm sorry, I'm like 45 minutes out."
Yeah.
So, but
and there is one subject that I should. One of these days, maybe today's the day.
Do it.
So this show, if you look at our Instagram analytics, is we just crested a new level where it became 89% men, 11% women. But forever,
you broke 10%.
Yeah, broke 10%.
That's huge.
But okay, I'll dive deep into like some things, and you can give me feedback. So like one thing that my wife has always been, I think I've shared this before, but she's always been really amazing. I got married young. I was 20.
Okay.
And so you could argue I was still like, I went straight from like being a son to my mother to like being married. And like, I think there's a tendency for males to be, I don't think they want to be treated like this, but they expect their wife or significant other to be like their mom, to take care of them, and like, hey, I have to make like can you make me a doctor's appointment? And like, and the women tend to be more responsible. I don't know. I think
so. You're right. Because sometimes like I looked, if it was just up to me, I'd have like 5-6 Scouts, So it's up to my wife to be like, okay, you need to make a reasonable decision. You have
Yes.
a kid now.
That's right.
You got another kid on the way.
But here's the question. What she's been great about is when I'd be like, and she's actually she was an accountant, and she's better with money than me.
Yeah.
So she always kind of managed our finances. And I remember it was like these early habits about, like, I would be like, hey, you take care of the bills. So I was actually disengaged from managing our money, and I would just let her do it.
Okay.
Down to like retirement, thinking about our future, to everything. And what I discovered, so I was just like, and this is back in the 90s, I'd be like, just give me my 20 for the week, which $20 was like for like food money.
Just for lunch.
For lunch, yeah. And it got to this point where it actually became something that she felt exposed on, because she was like, this guy doesn't care about our future. He doesn't care about our finance. So she took it as like, I'm negating my responsibility as her husband.
But you
so
kind of probably looked at it as like, I trust you to take care of my future.
That's right. But she was like, no, you're throwing me out to make these big decisions I don't want to make alone. So I had to go like, okay, this is not my area of expertise, but I need to be engaged. Do you remember in The Incredibles, like when there's like chaos around the dinner table, and the Elastic Girl, whatever her name is, the mom, she's like, Bob, engage, you know? And I think a lot of dudes are busy dreaming about their vintage 4x4s.
They are.
And
they're on their phone and on Instagram.
Disengaged a little bit from like kids and all that stuff. How have you managed that?
It's been hard.
As I say that, managed like past tense, so I'm sure you're managing it right now.
We're still managing, especially now because we have an 18-month-old, and this is going to be news to a lot of people watching, but because we haven't told all our friends yet, but we're expecting a second one coming up. So we're a little bit late to the game. Thanks. A little bit late to the game having kids, because you're like on your way out with your kids, and I'm like, we're just getting started. And I'm like, I feel old. My knees are hurting. Bad knee surgery. I'm like, man, bath time is hard.
That's right.
And I'm no expert, and my wife will tell you, like, I've got a lot to learn, but she's been so patient with me on everything. Like when I have like dreams and goals, she's like, you want a second Scout? That's great, but I need to have a reliable car. So that's like, all right, you're good. But you've got to kind of talk to them about things that you might not think are important, because it might be super important to them. Yeah. And that's the hard part, because you're like, this isn't that important, but to her it's very important. And then sometimes vice versa, she might think something's not as important, and to me it's like, well, that's my love language or something like that. Right. So, but I always, it's like for so many years I would, and I've played the role of like counselor at the Scout business, where it's like a customer would call me and be like, hey, I'm interested in XYZ. And then you're like, you talk them through it, give them a price, and they're like, okay, I gotta go check with the boss. Yeah. And I'm like, that's just because Heather's always been, she's like, I'm not your mom. Like, you make money. Like, you don't have to ask me permission to get another Scout if you feel like it's the right thing to do. I hate to break it to you, like I did that all the time when I was calling shops. I would just be like, well, I am just like, I want to pull the trigger, but I'm scared. So I would be like, I gotta go talk to the boss. And that just meant I was like, I'm not ready this week. It's gonna be next week before I do it. Right. But I've always appreciated that. Like, and I think so just as men, it's important to engage, and it's important to to not dismiss, because like those Scouts to you, like, you're a hardworking dude. Like, we'll get into that a little bit about just like the pressure that it is to be kind of an entrepreneuring doctor. Like, and we were talking a little bit earlier, you work a lot. Yeah. So like these Scouts for you are more important than just the transportation piece. Correct. And I think for a lot of guys, it's an interesting phenomenon. Like during the 2008 kind of financial crisis and COVID, like our business has grown on our parts side, because that's not something you'd expect. No, not at all. Because for a lot of guys, it's like their sanity is like going, the world is crazy, everything's out of control, but my Scout is still in the garage. Yep. And it still needs new floors, and it needs whatever, or a tune-up or whatever. Yeah. And I think just cars in general are
more important than just a physical object.
And that's definitely probably, like, not to be sexist, because there's definitely a lot of, you know, females, women who love cars as well too. But I have a lot of friends, like you know, Scotty Pippen, Matt Mooger, one of our good friends. We talk about cars all the time, and we both have like very busy professional lives, but our car is kind of like our refuge. Like, I had my Scout in the shop for a little while because I was getting the rear axle upgraded, and so I actually ride to work with one of my coworkers, Rachel, who's my physician assistant, and she's like, "Oh, you missed this truck, didn't you?" I was like, "Yes, I really missed it." So it just feels good to be back in it. And it's a Scout. I drive an hour and 15 minutes to work, driving like 70. So it's loud, it's rumbly. And then other days she drives in her Honda CR-V and it's like very quiet. I can actually do work on the computer.
Isn't that funny?
But I enjoy being in the Scout so much.
Yeah. Because I think you're bringing up a good point. Like, it's something we've talked about before, is like, for people who are busy in the mind, like I think a lot of entrepreneurs and just goal-oriented people are busy in the mind. Hopping in the Scout, it's like, your green Scout's pretty dialed. Yeah. But it's still not like driving a Mercedes. Like, so it's still like you have to drive it.
Yeah, I gotta
so you have to be present. You can't just be like on your phone the whole time, or like.
And that's different even between my 800s and manual. So
yes,
that was actually like probably like my driving home from work. That was my decomposing time because I had to shift. I could not pick up my phone to look and check a text message or anything like that. And having an hour drive to work back and forth, you know, if my coworker's driving, I'm on the phone. I'm checking Instagram, or I'm emailing, I'm reviewing charts. But if I'm in the green Scout, I can still pick it up every like 20 miles and like check, has anyone messaged me? Has anything happened? Did the stock market crash? But you've got to be engaged, and that's what's cool. And I love, some people say it's annoying, but I love reaching down to actually reach for the turn on the wipers.
That's awesome.
Something weird. And I have to change the speed. It's got 2 speeds depending on how hard it rains.
That's right.
That's something you kind of, so you feel kind of engaged with the truck, so it feels like an extension of you. Yeah. So, you know, you develop a little love affair with your vehicle, and it just means a lot. And I can't tell you, like, I got it back on Sunday, so the timing worked out great because you were coming down, and I stopped to get gas yesterday, and it was almost to the point, because so many people stopped to want to talk about the truck. Yeah. I was like, I'm just trying to fill up the tank, man. And then he starts telling me about his dad had one, and he grew up in one, and then he actually, I didn't tell you about him. He's in Valdosta, Georgia, and you did one of his swaps.
Oh, really?
Back when it was anything Scout. He said 8 or 9 years ago.
Wow.
So he may have been one of the originals.
What was his name? You remember?
Brian Hessler.
Okay.
So, but he said he wants to get you another truck.
Good.
So, but I'll get you his contact info. But that happens all the time, and that's what's cool about the trucks, because a lot of people have stories, and I don't have a background story to it.
But you do now.
But I do now, yeah.
And for your son, it'll be a big part of his life and his story.
He'll love it.
Which is really, really exciting. So you were like, also, I think the Scout world, other than like fidelity to the brand, the Scout world is like historically lagged behind the rest of the vintage 4x4. Like, it was the Bronco first, then the FJ40, then the Blazer, then the Scout. It wasn't too long ago, dude. Like 4 years ago, you could still buy a Scout for like $1,000, and now it's like good luck finding one for under 10. That's not like a complete roach.
That's really hard.
Yeah. But you were like one of the first people, I feel like a pioneer in the Scout space on Instagram.
I'd say Instagram space, for Scouts. Yeah. I didn't have any idea what I was talking about or doing. I was just like rambling off like facts of things that I learned. But yeah, and I feel like that was the time when Instagram started really taking off, like 5 years ago. I got my Scout at that time. At that point, everyone just had dog pages. Yeah. And I was like, well, I'm going to start a page for my car.
And so let me ask you this. Did you have the account set up before you took delivery of the Scout? Okay.
I think I had it set up like the week after I got it. And I was like, well, I don't want to load all my friends with like all these truck pictures, and it's exciting. You know, like you're like a kid and you get new shoes and you sleep with them in your bed because you can't wait to put them on in the morning. So before school. So that's kind of how I was, and I was like loading pictures, and then you're driving around like, I'm gonna stop at this spot to take a cool picture or a video.
Which you're good at. You have a good eye. Like your pictures are great.
It got better. If you look back at the original, they're terrible. I mean, but the iPhone, I claim that the iPhone camera is better, so that's why. But it grew, and then I just had a bunch of followers. And there's a lot of people now that do much better jobs, like Scout About South, like Mario up in Nashville. He does a killer job. Lydia down in Austin with
she's
Scouts
prolific.
ATX. She's a sweetheart, and she's got a great fan base.
Those people, just to be a little fair to you, they are awesome people.
Yeah.
We got to get Lydia on the show.
Yes.
So call out to
Lydia
you, Lydia.
would be awesome.
But they are both in within like a close proximity. Like Austin and Nashville are probably the largest concentration of scouts in any urban kind of city context.
True.
So that any props to them for helping to bring all those people together.
Yeah. There's like the island we live on is in southeast Georgia called St. Simons. It's about the size of Manhattan, and I think it's like 12,000, 11,000 residents.
Right.
So it's pretty small.
Right.
But there is a growing number of scouts, and I don't want to say that it's because of my scouts, but there is, and there's 3 people I know with 2 scouts now.
That's awesome.
On the island, which is pretty cool.
On the island.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And what's cool, we got to 2022, let's do a meetup. Because I know
awesome.
like in Georgia and North Florida, there's a lot of scouts.
There is.
Like we could have a big
Maybe
gathering.
next time you come down, we set something up. And
Yeah,
that
we
would
need
be
to.
That would be great.
It'd be epic, dude.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful down here.
It is.
I love it.
I'm jealous of going out west all the time because we don't got the trails and those kind of things. But it is beautiful. Like if you've seen like Forrest Gump where he runs through those trees with the Spanish
so
moss
cool.
hanging out, that's what our island is kind of like.
Yeah.
So it's definitely beautiful.
We'll
That's
invade the island.
Yeah.
So did you? Because you also like you have your Scout 800, but I know isn't your 800 you named it like Gun Bunny or something?
Gun Bunny.
But is there an Instagram? Was there ever a Instagram feed for that?
No.
Okay,
So
those are just like hashtags.
Just hashtags. Yeah.
Okay.
So I just came up with that the night before. It got delivered on July 5th, and then that weekend we were up in Savannah, and I had a beer called the Gun Bunny, and I didn't know what a gun bunny was. And if you don't know, it was back in like World War I, World War II. Those would be the guys that would just have ammo stacked, and they would jump out of the whatever like ravines and like run and carry ammo to people, and they'd call that like the Gun Bunny.
Okay.
And then I got the truck, and it had like a shotgun rack in the back.
Nice.
And I was like, okay, Gun Bunny.
Cool.
It's a cool name.
That's cool. So yeah, so props to you on that. Because that is a real nowadays like that. I mean, that's how you met Matt. Matt's like a really good friend. So like that Instagram, I think it's like one of the really good aspects of social media. There's a lot of negatives to social media.
Yeah.
Have you seen that the social dilemma?
Yes, I've seen that.
It's powerful.
And as many times as I'm like, oh, I want to get off social media. And me and Matt have actually talked about this, where it's like, it's so negative. I need to take a break for a while. You're getting your like little echo chamber or whatever you call it. But then I met some like really good friends off it, like Lydia and Matt. And I talk to Matt every single day. We've even got, we talk on the phone like every couple weeks. We set up our goals for the year together because we're both kind of entrepreneurial.
Yeah, talk about that
business.
process. Let's take a little diversion. So, busy guy.
Mm-hmm.
You could say like you're a doctor. Like to a lot of people, that's like the apex of a career.
I get, yeah.
So you could say like you've arrived.
Yes.
But you find yourself still hungry to set goals. And what is that process? What kind of these like personal goals, business goals, like talk about that format and kind of that conversation.
So it's complicated. It's a little bit complicated. So especially in medicine, it can be difficult because most doctors work for the hospital. If you don't work for the hospital, you're getting bought by the hospital. So most people actually have bosses. They get a paycheck. It's steady. They're not managing staff. It's everything's kind of done for you.
So real quick, because let's just take another diversion. So most doctors, like surgeons, ER doctors, like whatever, most of those people are employees of the hospital.
A majority.
And like, so meaning whether, is there like incentive packages to like how many surgeries you do, or?
It varies. So every hospital does a little bit different. And what they've come up with something is called RVU, which is like they apply an RVU. It's a unit that they apply to different type of procedures or visits. So if you're going to see a patient in the office, maybe it's worth 2 units. If you're going to do a 3-level spinal surgery, that might be 120 units.
Okay.
And you might get reimbursed based on a value of what you get per unit. Now that isn't everywhere. Most doctors are actually just kind of salary and employee model. There used to be a lot of private practice. Like when I grew up, everyone had a private practice family doctor you used to go to.
Right.
They'd manage the office and that was it. But it got very complicated with insurance. A lot of denials. You'd have to go through authorizations. So you would have to have 2 or 3 people in the back to get authorizations just for doing any simple. Like I'm a spine physician, so I am pain management and physical medicine and rehab. So what I do is mostly back and neck pain, and I do mostly minimally invasive injections, surgeries. But for me, it might be anywhere from 2 to 3 days to 2 weeks to get something authorized. I have some procedures that take 3 months.
Wow.
And then even if they approve something, it might take 2 to 3 months of us fighting it on the back end to actually get paid for it.
Interesting. So, will like government control healthcare change that?
Oh, now we're getting political.
Not really political,
No,
but like,
I know. But it seems like everything has kind of gotten political. So will that help? It's been a big shift in terms of if we look for, and this is my opinion, both personally and as a physician.
Yeah.
And I think that depending on what your specialty is also different. I think that if you are, and not everyone's the same, so I don't want to speak for all physicians, but if you're in primary care, sometimes it's hard to work on the back end to get paid for what you're doing. So in specialty care, there's a little bit better revenue for physicians, and that's I'm a specialist. But the concern about going to like a single payer system or a Medicare for all is that everyone thinks it will be like Medicare. And if you don't know, if you're too young for Medicare, the way Medicare usually works is most things are covered. We just have to make sure we follow their rules, and then they will pay you in 2 to 3 weeks. And that's kind of like the simplest way to explain it.
yeah.
But it's not like, have you ever gone to the DMV and been like, the government needs to control more of my life? Like,
Right.
Have you been to anything that's government run where it
Like
works
the post
smoothly?
office.
Like the post office. That's why there's UPS and FedEx and all these companies that kind of do a little bit better.
And the risk with like, well, the argument against like a single payer system is that the single payer government controlled system squeezes out any private practice or any...
That would be what would happen. And that's started. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. That's already in the motion. The reason most private practices are gone is because it's how hard it is to get reimbursed for procedures, for seeing patients. So you join a hospital system so that you can get a steady salary and not have to worry about the stress of running a practice. But what happens is if we go to a single payer system, at least in my opinion, is that it's not going to run like Medicare. It's going to run more like Medicaid or the VA.
Right.
And what that means is that you will need authorizations. And I've actually seen that in my specialty this year. For the first time ever, we have to get authorizations for certain procedures from Medicare that we never had to before.
So like someone needs a procedure and you're like, let me see if we can give you that procedure.
I can't just do it anymore.
Right.
Certain procedures, not all procedures.
Which is not always good because people are suffering.
Correct. And especially what I do, most of my patients are in pain. And what I try to do is avoid people being on narcotics, especially with the opioid epidemic. So I try to write for as little pain medication as I can. But some people have had 4 or 5 back surgeries and they have a ton of pain, scar tissue, they have cancer. So they do need some pain medications. But what I specialize is in doing a lot of procedures or interventions where they don't have to be on pills and they can still get back their quality of life. But like, what's hard is...
Can you give us an example of that? Because that's fascinating to me. Because I think the opioid epidemic came from, I'm sure it's complicated.
It is, yeah.
And simple at the same time. Like doctors were over prescribing Like,
yes.
You have this pain.
So I can tell you like this, because this all started when I was in med school, and then through residency, how everything changed. Like when we were training in medical school, we were taught as physicians that you can't become addicted to narcotics if you have pain.
Wow.
Because I would actually we would get graded on this. So I would actually tell
patients.
patients
Did that come from
this.
Big Pharma? Because that's like the argument is like that's propaganda from Big Pharma.
But we were taught that in medical school. We weren't allowed to have like paid lunches and all that kind of stuff. So that's what they were taught. And I don't know where a lot of that data and research came from Big Pharma, which is why you're seeing like a lot of those companies getting sued and having to pay for for Oxycontin and those types of things.
So they would literally say it's not addictive.
I used to say that to patients as a medical student.
If you have pain.
Because that's what my attendings would say.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And now you look back and you're like, well, that's stupid. Like, you would think any common sense person would know that. So then we started noticing, obviously, addiction, overdoses, abuse. And then the question is, well, who gets the blame for it? But at this point, it's like, what are we going to do to fix the issue?
Is it true? Sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
But I've heard that, like, I've heard stories, probably anecdotal stories, that like people who have legitimate pain get addicted to painkillers, that the pain, they have this sensation that the pain is still there, but then they wean off the painkillers and find out that they're not in pain anymore, but they really thought they were.
So it's called opioid hyperalgesia.
Wow.
Opioid induced
That's a real thing?
Yes.
That's crazy.
And the crazy thing is, like, one of the things I'll do in my clinics to look for that is patients who've been on narcotics for years and they keep escalating the dose. And what happens is, the way pain medicines work is they block your pain receptors.
Okay.
But your body is like an amazing thing where if you block pain receptors, other nerves that should not be doing pain start transmitting pain when they get stimulated. So they're stimulated. So if I'm touching your back, instead of you feeling like a light touch sensation, you start getting pain. So those patients, I'll like just be like, does it hurt here? And they'll be like, and they start screaming. And they've been steadily over years been increased. And what we find is if we actually decrease their medications or get them off narcotics, their pain kind of goes away. That overproduction of pain.
So is that a part of your practice?
It's part. I'm not like an addiction specialist by any means, because it's very complicated.
Oh no.
My chair breaks if I go down. Part of the chair is broke. But so I do call in specialists for that. Okay. There's addiction specialists that manage that. So I have patients mostly who are on, if they're on pain medicine at all, they're on lower doses, and we are trying to manage it. I'm in a great city with like really great people, and it's in Waycross, Georgia, where my clinic is. And it reminds me, I grew up in a steel mill city in Ohio, in Youngstown. And so it's hardworking people.
I didn't know that. I love Youngstown.
Yeah, Youngstown.
I was in Youngstown, and there was this... Youngstown was like, I do love the revival spirit of like those Rust Belt towns. There's like these people that are fighting for the revitalization of the city. And it was like this t-shirt shop or something that said like top 10 like most miserable, like saddest place to live or something like it is
Youngstown.
But it's a cool place.
It's super cool, and it's making a comeback a lot of those, because you have the tough part was when the industry went overseas, or for whatever reasons the industry went away. A lot of the young kids would leave. You'd go away to college, and then you'd go to live in a bigger city. A couple of my friends went to Nashville, which was I love Nashville. So but that's how kind of like Waycross was a big railroad town. So I didn't really know much about it until I was working over there. But yeah, all the railroads would stop in Waycross, and then they'd switch everything off different trains, and then they'd go from there to Florida or out west.
So sorry to take you off track.
No, you're good.
So back to what you were saying.
So back to what were we talking about?
I don't know.
The opioids.
But I did want to. You started saying that you try to specialize in interventions that to not just prescribe opioids.
Correct.
So what does that look like?
So there's different things. So we actually can do a lot. What I do is a lot of interventional procedures. So that would mean like minimally invasive procedures like injections, nerve blocks.
Okay.
Like your bread and butter is what you may have heard of people getting epidurals.
Yeah.
And people think if they go to pain management, they just do epidurals. But we do a ton more than that. Like I can do things from, if you've got arthritis in your back, I can actually do something called a nerve ablation, where I can actually kill the part of the nerve that does the arthritis pain, but you still will be able to actually feel everything else and use your muscles. If you injure something, you'll know it, but at least your day-to-day arthritis pain goes away.
Yeah, right.
We do that now for knees and shoulders, for hip arthritis as well too, for people who can't have a knee replacement. then some people have a knee replacement and they still have pain.
Interesting.
The coolest thing we're doing, which I had like 4 patients today who have had 2 had multiple back surgeries, 2 had actually ankle and foot surgeries from crush injuries and had chronic nerve pain. So we actually do thing like it's called a spinal cord stimulator, which is like a pacemaker for pain.
Really?
So we do a trial run where we actually put a couple wires on the inside of the spinal canal, outside on the spinal cord, and stimulate electrical activity. And it actually blocks the pain without you noticing anything. And these newest systems that we use is, I had a patient today, like we turned it on, we had her start walking across the room and she had like a limp. And then by the time she turned around to come back, like it started kicking in, and we call it like a wash-in period. It takes about 60 seconds and her pain was gone and her limp was gone.
No way, man.
And she's like, I've had a limp for 8 years.
Wow.
And that's like the rewarding stuff.
Yeah, it's got to be really special, but I'm sure there's also, it's a hard job, dude.
It is very hard. I don't know if it's definitely an American thing. We want things fast and quick and easy. I can't tell you, there's a lot of, I wish I could say everyone comes in like everyone wants to get better, but some people don't. And sometimes people want the quick fix. Like, can I just get a medicine? I know this medicine works if I take it. But it's like, I'm trying to be on a diet, but Chick-fil-A is really good.
Right.
So, I mean, like, what's the easier thing? Go to work out for an hour, or maybe I'll have Chick-fil-A.
Yep.
I had Chick-fil-A today.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, it was
I love Chick-fil-A. I was told by someone in my town, I have like, on Chick-fil-A, the app, you get those reward points.
Yep.
And I have like 56,000 points on the app. Yeah, because I'm saving it. Someday, I'm just going to go into a Chick-fil-A and just buy everybody lunch in the whole, like 100 people. But I guess like the ISU, some athletic food person has like 600,000 points.
So they're ordering for the people.
Yeah, they're ordering for all the sports teams.
So what my manager does, like, I know what you're doing. I'm like, get Chick-fil-A for the office, and she'll be like, oh, I'll just order for everyone. So I give her my credit card, exactly. And she's on her app, and I'm like, she goes, oh, I always get free Chick-fil-A.
That's right.
Like, that's awesome.
Well, interesting, man. So what about, like, I'm a simple guy. I like old times. Mm-hmm. Well, some of the aspects of old. I think it's easy to romanticize like certain periods of our history that I know were not great for everybody and whatever. But just the simple town physician.
Yes.
Where like maybe you pay him a retainer. Like isn't that like a thing? Like my neighbor, God bless her, she is I think a physician's assistant.
Okay, yeah.
But she has helped our family so many times. And I'm like, why can't we just have like a neighborhood doctor who just carries her bag around, and we all pay her like $500 a month?
Yeah.
And then she just helps people when they need help.
So there is some of that. So there are some doctors. We've actually got, I think, 1 or 2 on the island who will do that. They'll even do house calls. But you do have to pay like it's still got to be kind of not lucrative, but they got to make a living as well too. But they can do that, and there is kind of like a return back to that, because people are like, I have $5,000 or $10,000 deductibles.
Right.
So, am I going to go through my doctor's office and have to pay $200 for a new patient visit, or $100 every time I see him, or I can just get this like on demand doc that will come?
Because that's like, you can have a lawyer on retainer, right? Like where you just pay the lawyer $1,000 a month.
And there's a name for it, but I just can't
in the
think
medical
of
field.
in the medical field.
That's
concierge medicine.
Okay,
is what it's called.
And that's legal.
That's legal. And there's a few docs around here that just switched to concierge, and they have caps of anywhere from, like, depending how many doctors, from 1,000 patients to 5,000, depending.
One doctor?
You would think that's a lot. Like, I've been at my clinic now for a little over a year, and I've got probably between 1,500 and 2,000 patients.
Okay, wow.
So you kind of build it, because you're not seeing them every month.
Right.
They might not come in once a year for a check-in, just to make sure they're doing.
So let's run the numbers.
Okay.
So if you're the concierge, is it concierge?
Concierge medicine.
Concierge medicine, and you have 1,000 patients.
Yes.
And they're all paying you $500 a month.
I gotta get my calculator, but it's like
That seems like pretty good money.
it seems like pretty good money, but they
And
gotta
then-
run the office.
No, they don't have an office because there's just them.
Well, if they're doing it out of their house, then
Yeah.
that sounds pretty good. But most of them have staff.
Yeah.
Someone's got to do. They still bill your insurance. If,
Yeah.
But what they're doing is because they won't go and treat you for free because if they got to give you an injection, they've got to do something for you interventional. That still
Yeah.
costs some money. So
Right,
sometimes
right,
they'll bill
right.
insurance. But the benefit of how they're doing it is that you'll be seen right away and that day.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's cool is what they're doing is they have set up relationships with imaging centers, different surgeons,
Yeah.
different pharmacies, where if you need something now, all of a sudden, instead of paying the self-pay rate of say $1,000 for an MRI, $200.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
you really only need then like a catastrophic insurance plan in case something happens, you get in an accident.
So
have
I
to go
think
to the
there's
hospital.
something to that. Okay, I didn't mean this to turn into a medical episode.
It is, yeah,
but
but it's okay.
but it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And how many times you get to have a frank conversation with someone on the inside? Okay, so what about someone told me that one of the ways we could fix the healthcare, I don't know if it's a crisis, but the healthcare, one major innovation would be transparency.
Yes.
So, like, for example, I'll talk about this more, but I'm in Jacksonville to get treatment on my hand because I have a condition, unfortunately, called Dupuytren's contracture.
And you said it right, which is
Yeah, it
That's
took me a
good.
while. It took
Yeah.
me a while. But I'm like, when I did my consultation, I'm like, hey, can you, before I do this, because they're just like, show up. So I'm in Iowa, and, and I found these guys online.
Just fly down and
They're like, just fly
get a
down.
hotel.
And if the consultation goes well, on Monday morning at 8 a.m., by 10 a.m. we'll start your treatments. And so I'm like, okay, like, do you guys take insurance? They're like, yeah, this treatment is covered by insurance. And I guess I have decent insurance. It costs our family a ton.
Yeah,
I think we
all
pay
insurance
we pay
does.
$2,000 out of pocket a month.
That's why you were like 500. Sounds good.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
But anyway, and we're pretty healthy people for the most part, but having babies and all that kind of stuff, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, hey, I just need to know before we do this. And they were almost like a little thrown off by that. Like, okay, well, let me get
A lot of people don't ask.
the financial department over here.
Unfortunately,
Yeah, but it was great. They're like, it's going to be this price, no more, no less. Like, I'm like, okay, great.
Yeah.
Now I know that I can make this decision. I'm not going to go into like, cause I'm like, ooh, like 50 grand. It's like some kind of proton therapy. I don't know.
You don't
how
know
much
what
that
it's gonna
costs.
be.
Right. And like, so someone said like transparency and pre-negotiation. That's like
Yes.
in business relationships, and I'm not perfect, but in the scout business, like we pre-bid everything.
You guys did with mine. When
It's
I did my
tough.
bill. Yeah.
It's like for 15 years we lost money because I'm like, I would be like, how much do I think they could pay?
Yeah.
Like I want to help them out, and it's like okay. There was no then we just finally standardize it, and we have to get if I want to pay my guys well and give them benefits and give them a life that they should
They
get
deserve.
from expressing their craft. Like anyway, but pre-negotiation. So when I was in Cambodia, a fellow traveler, well-traveled person said, whatever you do in Cambodia, pre-negotiate your tuk-tuk rides.
Oh, you really? Okay.
So like, and it's true, dude.
Yeah.
One time, Monday, I got a tuk-tuk driver. I'm like, hey, I want to go, will you just be my driver for the whole day? Like I was thinking I was with my daughter or something like that. And I'm like, how much? And like, I didn't chisel him. I just said like, how much? He's like, $40. I'll from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., which in Cambodia is a pretty good day's wage. So next day I get the same guy, and I'm like, he's like eager to see me.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, let's go again. But I just said like, hey, can you take me around today? Takes me around. End of the day, he's like $60. I'm like, yesterday it was 40
$40. Yeah.
He's like, so we didn't set a price like $60. So I paid him the $60. I was pretty,
Yeah.
I was like kind of miffed, you know?
Yeah. I would be.
This poor Cambodian guy.
Yeah. You're like $20.
So then the next morning he comes like, let's go again. I'm like, nope, I'm going with this guy.
He's doing it for $40.
Because I've also have a business. Someone told me the pig gets fed, but the hog gets slaughtered.
Yep.
So don't get greedy. And I felt like the guy got greedy on me.
Did.
And so anyway, back to the medical space. Is that something that you guys would offer a patient?
Yes. So we definitely offer that kind of stuff, especially for self-pay patients. Like, you'll know up front, and that's one of the things like I strike, because I don't want patients.
So what is self-pay?
So self-pay would be like if you don't have any insurance.
Okay.
And there are some people that have just catastrophic plans.
Yep.
And for them, they're like, I'm not really sick. I've got maybe some back issues, and a couple times a year I have to go get an injection.
Yep.
So for them, it costs much less money to get that plan and just pay self-pay.
So self-pay, they would say, okay, how much is this? You kind of have
give
to
them a
like
self-pay price before.
But you have to somewhat do an assessment of what they need, right?
Yeah, I'll do an assessment to see we'll evaluate them, make sure they have an MRI and an X-ray, see exactly what they need, what type of injection. Because even if you say someone needs an epidural, I can do an epidural about 9 or 10 different ways.
Okay.
So if someone says, and I compare it to like, oh, I've got joint pain. Well, is it your knee or your hip? Because I can do a joint injection in your knee, and it might not help your hip pain.
Right.
Same with an epidural. Like, I can do it in a lot of different ways. So we'll give them a self-pay price, and it's usually based off the Medicare rate.
Okay.
So most clinics will base that off, like, what does Medicare pay for this? What's a fair amount? Some clinics will do 150% of Medicare. Some will do 110, 120. For us, it depends on the exact procedure that you're getting.
Yeah, and that only works. So let's say you have health insurance, but you don't want your health insurance to go up by making a claim.
Well, it won't go up if you make a claim, but if we submit it, it'll go towards your deductible.
Okay, got it.
And going back, like, if we look at what's the reason, like, your insurance is so expensive and you probably have a deductible. Like, my deductible's $5,000 individual, I think $10,000 for the family.
Right. Yeah.
And when we grew up, it was like you'd pay no money when you went to your family doctor.
Right.
And $1,000 deductible for your whole family. And,
right.
and the reason it's gone up is because they have to, the insurance company is spreading all your money that you're paying for your insurance to cover the people who can't afford the other plans. Interesting. So it's good because we get more people covered, but what's happened is your deductible's gone up too. So now you actually don't really use your insurance. You get
right.
insurance, but you're still paying for most things out of pocket.
Right. That's what's frustrating.
So there really needs to be a program, like an expansion of, and this is getting more into healthcare, but a Medicaid plan or Medicare plan where you can actually help people who need the benefit without exactly punishing people who are paying for their insurance and then can't use it.
Okay, last question on medical, then we'll move on.
We'll get some other
This is good
stuff.
though. But what? So like, there's like, oh man, I don't know what it's called, but like there's some like faith-based group that you can join up with. Like, so essentially you're like, if you're a member and I'm a member,
yeah,
you pay X amount of dollars a month.
Yeah.
But the payment goes to your, like if you have a procedure, they'll say send the money.
I have some patients like that.
Yeah, what is that? What is that?
So they're part of mostly it's usually church. Like churches that do this are religious communities. But you could do this theoretically. I don't see why you couldn't do this if you were a business. Like Walmart, for example, has their own doctors. Like, so if you can see your family doctor, but if you need a knee replacement and you're here, they're not going to cover it if you work at Walmart. You have to go to Atlanta and they have 2 or 3 knee replacement doctors.
Interesting.
But what these patients do is, like, I've got a guy who with neck pain who needs like a epidural in his neck every like 6 months or so. So he has to pay out of his pocket, self-pay price, and then he turns in the receipt to his church and they actually reimburse him. So everyone in the church actually contributes to that account, and they all are covered on this health insurance plan.
And he doesn't have like splatter insurance.
There's
some don't.
If he doesn't, he should.
Yeah, right.
But I'm sure you could set that up with your plan, and a lot of that stuff is negotiable.
I kind of like the Wild West stuff, like just.
Yeah.
I know there's like, because it's like I have so much insurance, it'll make your mind, like with the
I'm
business
sure.
we have like this insurance and that insurance and this insurance. Like we're paying
so much
$10,000 a
insurance.
month in insurance. It's
just
like,
in case something happens.
Just in case something happens.
Yeah.
Where if I just put $10,000 aside,
and then if something happened,
I know, but then if it's like someone just catastrophically sues you or something, then it's like, even if you save 10 grand a month for 5 years, it's still not enough. You could lose everything.
Well, just one thing could happen. Like
Yeah.
something falls in someone's arm.
It's hard, dude.
Traumatic amputation. That would be really expensive.
That's right. Terrible. Okay, dude. Well, thank you for that. That was really insightful.
Yeah, sorry for the boring medical. And that's just my perspective, I'll say.
Yeah, and we should start a segment, like if we do this like twice a year with podcast with Manny.
Yeah.
Just submit your medical questions.
Yeah, submit your questions. I'll answer them. I'll let you know if you need to go get that wart looked at.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, let me see. This is going to be, I want to talk about just one thing more related to the Scout, and then I want to get into some other stuff. But how awesome was Moab?
Moab was awesome.
So we do this New Legend owners group, and you came.
I came, yeah.
And you're just like so amped, and like you brought so much energy.
Because we drove, my buddy Mickey, like he's my best friend from back in Ohio, and I was like, do you want to go on this trip with me? He's big into camping. He camps, like hikes for like a week and camps in this like little backpack tent. And we drove from here to Moab in like 3 days.
It's a long drive,
4
dude.
days maybe. So we got there and we were amped. We were ready to go. And it was awesome. We were just happy you guys invited us because we're like, you guys sure you want to invite us?
Yeah.
But it was great to meet the crew in the shop because everyone is... Like what you see in the YouTube videos, or you might see like online, like Sean and the guys are exactly like this. They're just so welcoming. They made you breakfast. They want to make sure everyone's having a good time. They want to make sure that everyone feels welcome. Like whatever you want to do, they want to make sure you're happy. And it's not like that with a lot of businesses, let alone like you're getting a truck built for them. Like most of them, they just want your money, and then we'll take 3 times as long to build your truck, and then afterwards, see you later. So it's a whole different.
But it's reciprocal. Like we have, like I mean, some of my best friends are people like you, and like just customers that have become friends because we have similar things in common, and we're after the same thing. Just like building Scouts is just our specialty, and fixing backs is your specialty.
Yeah, that's true. You wouldn't want me trying to fix your Scout.
But was that like your first time in maybe in Moab?
It was definitely our first time in Moab. It was my first time. This is embarrassing, but it was my first time camping, and it was like sleeping on the roof on our Scout, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And I know you've talked about this on other podcasts and things, but you've got people that just want to show up. You got friends probably like this at home. They show up, they don't bring anything. They show up to the party, they don't bring a platter, they don't bring any beer.
Yeah.
And then you've got other people that are like, well, they've been planning for weeks. So I was like, I had a fridge, I had all this equipment. I had like bins labeled with like, this is like snacks. These are like breakdown on the side of the road tools.
So like you're a manly dude, and I have respect for you.
Yeah.
But it was really I'm trying to think of a better word than like cute.
Yeah.
Like you just showed up like so amped, which again, just that not being like, it's so easy as we grow older to grow more cynical and just less excited, but you came like so amped, and that's infectious, and I really appreciate that.
We were just happy to be there. I can't tell
and
you.
You had all the gear, dude.
We had so much gear. I was like,
that's great.
I bought a Scottle. I still haven't used it. I don't even know how to, like, it's easy to use, but when we got to Moab and we were like driving around and we saw Bueller and his Scout, and we passed, I was like, I think that's Bueller. Shout out to Ferris Bueller on Instagram. He's a great guy, and we just pulled a U-turn, and I was so psyched. Like I started like videotaping on.
And bring him to another guy that's just amped. And like he's just stoked.
We were just all like super happy to be there, and because a lot of times like he's kind of like I am. Like we work super hard most of the week. I mean, and I've started a new practice, so it's not even just part of the week. It is nonstop. It's like 24/7. Last weekend I was training people in Atlanta. It just never ends. So to get a break and then to do something with other people who enjoy similar stuff, and we don't have to have any of the same views on anything else. But
that's right.
We love hanging out on doing trails with Scout.
That's one of the things that brings great meaning to me, is not only the ability to help facilitate memories and family connections, but like Scouts, like so this dude on YouTube, Like the YouTube comments are like actually hilarious.
Those are
even
the
when
best.
people thrash us. Like
Yeah.
I don't take it personally anymore.
So are you like? So you do read them. You're not like the Joe Rogan, like where you're like, I don't read any of my comments.
No, because I
Okay.
think it's just funny, and
Okay.
it gives me insight. And some people have good feedback, but this one guy's like, literally on their last video, and I wasn't being sappy. I can be sappy, but he's like, stop using the word community. It's annoying. But like, what that dude doesn't understand is what you just said is like really powerful today in our divided world. Like when we go to a meetup, when we go to Moab, you have no clue. Like, and it doesn't matter that like people think differently about
Exactly.
politics or whatever. Like we're there, we have common interests, we're getting along, we're having a great time.
And most of us agree on like 90.
That's right.
99% of the same
That's
stuff.
right.
There's
That's
just like
right.
this little bit. But when you can get people out together doing things that they enjoy together, then all of a sudden, like the other stuff, you're like, is that really important?
That's right.
Like, what's the importance?
Because none of us were checking our news feeds. Like,
No, I had no idea what was happening in the world.
isn't that
and it was
nice,
great.
dude? It's nice.
And I was like, oh, the world still went on, and everyone
Yeah.
was fine.
That's
It's not
right.
the end of the world every week.
So kind of share a little bit, like, because I've been wheeling and adventuring like that for a long time.
Yeah.
But like the wide-eyed wonder of like trail driving and like trying challenging, and just for the like, I'll say it to the world, like you were bombing everything and like. And
I was like, I'm going full bore. I took all four wheels off the sand dune and like went airborne.
And as builders, we're there, like, and on these trips, we bring our shop guys so that they can experience you having joy, and like they get to see you having joy in this truck that they built.
And then in the morning, they would like go around checking everyone's undercarriage to make sure like
but
everything
like
was
on the
still
trail,
together.
they're like, geez, dude, Manny's really hitting it hard, because we're like, we don't want the truck to break.
No,
but
well,
it didn't.
did pretty good. No, it did great.
And you were bombing it, dude. It was like
I think I messed up like my muffler, one jump, but that was like that wasn't too bad of a thing. But I definitely am not going through mud, not like wet mud.
Because you said you're still cleaning your truck.
It's still like on every little crevice in the engine bay that you could think of, and I've had it detailed. I've had the engine bay detailed, and it's just everywhere. I mean, it was coming up through what do you call it?
Like your shifter, right?
Through the shifter, like
geez.
mud. And I was
man.
like, why did I do that?
And the jumping is like,
And the jumping was
dude,
probably
because
not
like
smart.
Brigham, I don't know if anyone knows this, but New Legend series, both you guys had your trucks pretty high in the air,
Yeah.
and a stock axle is just not built for
Yeah,
jumping.
Dana 44.
So Brigham actually bent his front axle.
Oh, did he? I didn't know that.
Yeah, we just replaced it with a heavy duty or a heavier
good.
duty
I got
model.
a heavy duty one on the back because I still got the 10. I've been riding with the 10 on for a year.
Yeah, the back axle's sweet.
Yeah.
What was that like? Just like, did you enjoy trail driving and like?
I loved it. And I liked because you guys kind of eased. It wasn't like a super easy course.
Right.
So I didn't feel like this is boring. Like there were a lot of fun parts to it, but it made me want to do more.
Good.
That was really like I am so jealous of these West Coast people who can
I
just
know.
live at the beach in Cali. They got to pay a bunch of taxes, but then they can just drive like for 2 hours and be in the mountains and then go skiing and do all this
deal
kind of
with
stuff.
a lot of homeless.
Yeah, that's all.
Quality of.
Yeah, you can listen to Joe Rogan's episode for that stuff.
Yeah, I do. I need to. I haven't listened to him in a while.
He's always, that's why he left. He was just like California's
Yeah,
kind
there's a pretty big exodus. Places like Texas, Nashville. I mean, all over the Florida. Like you were saying, Jacksonville is growing.
Yeah, Jacksonville is like the fastest growing city for the last year. Most transplants, mostly from a lot of people from New York and California.
Yeah, I heard
Same with
this,
Austin.
There was this single mom on NPR. There was this single mom from Pennsylvania, like Philadelphia.
Yeah.
That was like, she's like, my kid needs to go to school. I'm moving to Florida so I can put my kid back in school. That's crazy.
It is, because people are making changes, and you have to kind of do what's and listen, I think everyone has to do what's best for you and your family.
Yep.
And I think my parents came over from Romania, which was a communist country. They actually got exiled because they fought for freedom, and like freedom of religion was really what my dad's a priest. That's what he fought for. So for me growing up, that was the biggest thing, being able to make decisions for you and what you want to do. And that's what kind of America kind of stood for. So I think you should be able to make those decisions. I don't think you should put other people in harm. There's got to be a balance for sure. But you've kind of seen, and I think how different places have handled it speaks for itself.
Right.
At least in my
So
opinion.
were you born here?
I was born here. Yeah, my parents came, and I was born within like 9 months later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So I didn't speak. My parents are like the complete immigrant story. They came over with a suitcase. They didn't speak English. They didn't know anybody. Some lady at the airport at JFK took them home. Some stranger.
And they went straight to Ohio.
No, so they went.
Okay.
So someone at JFK took them home. Over the course of she let them stay with them, with her family for 2 to 3 months.
Wow.
And my dad, the next morning, woke up and went to the library, taught himself how to speak English.
No way.
And then he got a church in Chicago. So that's
okay.
That's actually where I was born.
Okay.
So they lived in Chicago, Indiana, Chicago, and then back in Ohio. So my parents struggled. So thank you, Mom and Dad. You can never thank you enough.
Yeah.
But I'm where I'm at. My brothers are where they're at because of my parents, because they sacrifice, and you think they made such a small salary as my dad being a priest,
right,
and he was able to afford, give our kids a better life. That was their big goal.
Well, that's similar.
Sorry, that was a little sad story,
that's my mom came. My grandparents escaped Nazi the German invasion in Poland.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and they got displaced. So that essentially the Germans rolled through Poland, and when they took my grandfather, that was the last time he ever saw his family.
Oh wow.
And they just took him into these work camps. So he went from Italy to and ended up in Austria in a work camp, a refugee kind of labor camp. And that's where he met my grandmother. They got married. My mom was born there.
In the
camp, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And then she was 10 when they came over. And the same story, he just came with a suitcase and nothing.
Can you imagine that kind of stuff?
No.
Sometimes we think it's risky. I thought it was a big risk taking this, starting a new practice, starting a new business. It's my parents left everything they knew, everyone they knew, didn't speak the language. I mean, that's risky.
Yeah, and what's special is they came for the right. I mean, I think my grandparents came for the promise of freedom and to stand on their own 2 feet and for opportunity to become whatever they wanted to become. So I love that.
Yep.
So how do you how old's your son?
19 months now.
19 months.
Mm-hmm.
And you have one on the way.
Yes, one on the way.
That's amazing.
Surprise.
So your parents sacrificed so you could have a better life.
Yeah.
So your kids have arguably, you could probably argue they have more than you had when you were little.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you instill, because I think it's kind of like the Rocky story. When you come from hard times.
Rocky 2, Rocky 3,
when you come from hard times.
Conor McGregor story now.
Yeah. I think one of the things that comes out of that is hard. If you're going to make it, you're going to make it, not pull yourself up by your boot, but you're going to work your butt off and work hard to make it. And I still believe that that's true in America. Anyone has the opportunity, I don't care where you come from. I was talking to my son about this, and maybe you could poke holes in it. As a universal principle, regardless of what you think about race or whatever, I don't care where you come from. If you are willing to work harder than everybody else, you can still do better than you did a month ago and better than you did a year ago.
Well, I feel like this is the country where you can do it. I mean, there's a lot of places where you can't.
Maybe you can't. Yeah.
And I don't claim to know everyone else's struggles, because other people have specific struggles that are different based on race, religion, sex. But at least I can say, coming from where I'm at, growing up, my parents would clean. My dad was a priest, but we would clean banks at nighttime. So I would sleep on a bench. That would be my bed, so they could clean. And now it's I've got 2 scouts.
That's right.
I've got the expendable income where I can have fun and take trips. So now what am I going to do to help my kid
That's
realize
right.
how hard it is to work? Because college, med school was not easy. Like they don't pay you a bunch of money in med school. I mean, you pay them a ton of money.
Right.
I came out with like, between close to 400 grand in debt.
Wow.
After all my training. So I don't know. So I think one of the reasons I got into the vintage 4x4 and the Scouts was really to try to have some sort of, my thought was a connection to more not being on your phone, not being on your computer, your tablet, and your TV screen watching movies, but being out in nature. And I thought that would be the way to kind of make them learn about some hard work.
I certainly think that's one way, like 100%.
And I'm up for advice because that's the thing I'm afraid of. My wife's the same way, Gina. Like, we didn't grow up with money.
Yep.
So like, but we think we turned out like pretty good people and we were hardworking. And she's an awesome mom. So, but it's like, what do we do to make sure our kids grow up not spoiled?
Not spoiled. Because I think it's almost an implicit norm in this young generation because of people like me and people like you who go like, I want to give my dad had nothing, dude. My dad was like, I think he quit school in 6th grade. So he's like an 11-year-old, like stopped going to school and he started smoking and like working and like he was just a beach rat in Venice.
Yeah.
And he had a single mom, like no dad, and like, but he worked hard and he tried to do, and he did, like he provided a better life for me than what he had, and better than what his father could provide him. So like I've worked. So for example, and it's whatever. Like I'm not gonna argue like. I don't know. It's hard to get your hands around it. But one of the things, like we really wanted a wood burning, because like when I grew up, our house was heated with coal.
Okay.
Like so, literally, a truck would show up, dump a giant batch of coal. We'd shovel it into this.
I've never seen that. So they just dump it in your backyard and like you shovel it in.
And we'd shovel into this bin, and then and we grew up in Connecticut, so it's cold in the winter. We had 2 coal stoves, one in each story, and whoever, like we had to take shifts as you got old enough. You'd have the 2 a.m. like because if the stove went out, your house would be freezing, and coal takes a long time to start. So you have to start a wood fire.
Okay.
But it's like, so that I remember that I hated it, and just like taking out the garbage and mowing the lawn and like just those and cutting down. We had a 2-acre yard just full of trees. So like, and like I'd be trying to lift something. My dad would be like, just get back in the house. Let me get your sister and I'll have her help me. And I'll be like,
I'll lift this big log.
That's right.
I'll show you, Dad.
I'll show you. So like when we moved to Iowa, we had the opportunity to get a wood burning, just a wood fireplace.
Yeah.
So I'm like, the least chop, even though it's not we're not heating our home with a wood fireplace, but like the kids don't know that. And if they want to have like a nice fire, which is a fun experience, like they got to go chop the wood. We're going to go to the woods. We're going to cut down a standing dead tree. We're going to buck it and harvest it. Yeah. And split it. And it's like, and we're doing it in the cold, and it's like, and my girls would try to help too. And so I think things like, so you're not far off. I think when you go camping, one of the things that's great is like everyone has a chore. Everyone has a role to play. If you want to eat, if you want to have a place to sleep,
you gotta have a chore or something to
so
do.
I think that is good.
Yeah.
And just like I'm off the cuff here, but another thing that's beautiful about the Scout is it is noisy. Like Antal, dude. That's why I was so impressed with the Antal and Ashley. Like for in a Scout 80, no AC, Moab from LA, driving.
2 kids in car
dog.
seats and a dog, a puppy,
and all their gear in a Scout 80, which is not big.
And they don't have AC or radio, right?
No. Awesome.
That's wild.
So proud of those guys.
Props to you guys for doing that.
But like their kids, like it's kind of suffering instead of like being in the back of the Lincoln Navigator or
with like your screen.
with the screen and like
Yep.
AC vent, like in cooled seats, which is not that's
which is
fine.
nice too.
It's nice too.
Yeah.
But
It's not the same.
Try to like raising my kids in the back of a Scout Traveler that the AC, as long as my wife had some AC, that was fine. It doesn't reach.
No.
But like seeing the kids back there, like just glistening with sweat and like trying to read a book, it's like that builds character. And like, and unfortunately in an opulent kind of society, I think those things are important and they do build character.
I agree.
So just take them in the back of Gun Bunny.
And I'll just let him sweat it out.
Sweat it out.
So I'll let him sweat it out.
Bounce and like
what?
And look out the window.
Well, I think in like another probably 6 months, he's gonna love it. He's gonna love like riding back there, and I could, in the 800, I could take the top down, so he'll have a blast in the summer with it.
Awesome. And it becomes so powerful, like in their little memory banks.
Yes.
Like the wind in their hair, like just the bugs.
Because I remember weird stuff like. Growing up, we used to drive down to Florida for vacation. Like we couldn't afford to fly, so my dad, and he was just like, "I'm just gonna do this, and we're not stopping." So he would drive like 12 hours, 14 hours straight, and then 12, 14 hours back. And when we were really little, we used to be in a pack and play in the back seat.
No way.
No seatbelts or child seats or anything like that. We would just sleep in there and then sit up and play. And then when we got older, we thought we were rich because we had a GMC Safari minivan.
Yeah.
Where you could hit the button and in the back, like the seat would go down into a bed.
Yeah.
And it was like, that was awesome. Like we'd sit there with our like Walkman, like listening to music for 12 hours.
And that's what I was going to ask you. Like, have you and your wife like intentionally set out to say like, hey, here's some values that we want to instill, and here's how we're gonna, when you talk about goals, like, and here's a couple of ways we're gonna do that.
We have talked a lot about like concepts of things that we don't want him to be spoiled, or our kids to be spoiled. But we don't have like a game plan yet.
Okay.
I have to be honest with it. I love to say we've got a game plan, but we don't. We're debating like, do they go to public school or private school?
Mm-hmm.
How often do we get a babysitter? Like even those are still things because he's so little. We're still debating that. Like we're so used to kind of struggling because how we grew up,
right?
Which we weren't. We always had food on the table. Like
right.
Her parents, her mom and dad worked super hard. So did my parents. But we kind of feel bad if we have a babysitter.
Yeah.
So we went for 6 months, actually like 8 or 9 months during COVID, and like, some people can never afford a babysitter, so I understand. But like, we never had a babysitter, never went out on a date or anything like that. And I'm like, we have to do something for us. Yeah. Like, babysitter once every couple of weeks, I think is reasonable for a few hours.
Yeah.
It's hard to find good babysitters, but we have a good one now.
Yeah, we'll have to follow up just on that development because I think.
What have you done? Like, what was besides like obviously in the Scout, but
like taking those trips, like that's a real way to build character because there's not. Fortunately, right? There's not like for us, there wasn't a lot of suffering in our life, like, which I think to some extent, some level of suffering builds character, and so, or discomfort. So going on gritty road trips in a Scout was one of those ways that we could introduce that. I think really pushing like responsibility around chores. So we as a family, and my wife, it kind of really handled the brunt of this because we had chore day.
Oh, okay.
And our kids hated it.
Everyone had to do it like on the same day of the week?
Yeah, our kids hated it and my wife hated it. But it was like,
do it.
And we didn't do allowance. We just said, you're a part of our family. We're all working hard. You have to contribute. If you want to get the benefits of the family, like when we go on vacation, or if we go to...
Now, how did you handle, like... Because they're going to come home and be like, well, Jenny got this. Jenny's parents gave him a phone.
I go, I don't care.
Yeah.
That's nice for
Deal
Jenny.
with it.
Yeah. So, like,
Jenny.
we did have no phones until freshman year, which was tough to stick to, but it was the right thing.
Good.
And then, like when we wanted to see them contribute to their first car. I had to pay all that stuff 100% on my own, like pay for my own gas, insurance. We're a little more
For your
lenient.
first car? What was your first car? Because you used to be muscle car guy, right?
Muscle car guy, but my first official car was a '69 Chevy C10 truck, but it never really drove because I just worked on it and like did all this stuff. And my first car that I actually drove was a 1984 Pontiac Sunbird.
Oh, cool.
It was a 4-cylinder, rear-wheel drive, 4-speed.
Yeah.
And I just loved doing burnouts and pulling the e-brake.
My first car was a Pontiac.
Was it? Which one?
You remember when they made the Grand Prix with the wide track? It was a 99 Grand Prix GTP, and it was black, all black interior.
That's pretty
then
sweet.
I put some silver racing stripes down.
Nice.
Because it was right around the time that like Fast and Furious came out, and I was like, this is going to be awesome.
But that speaks to, because Matt's story was similar, like to want a car like that, that's like a little bit out of the ordinary car. And like to customize it shows like some
I kind of tried to do all kinds of cool stuff to it. Like I was in like home ec class, so I did like shifter knob covers for it and like covers for the handles, weird stuff. And
what happened to it?
I had it for probably 5 or 6 years, or actually no, I had it through college until medical school, and then I finally just sold it because I was probably like 10 years old.
Was
at
it
that
fast
point.
at all? Or?
It was.
It was?
I mean, I got a
Was
buddy.
it supercharged?
Yes.
Okay.
It had a little button you could push on the side of it. And in college, this is a bad story, but we used to go to, we'd go to house parties or whatever, and then afterwards, and but I was like, this is the fastest car. My buddy's dad had one too, and his dad, they were loaded. And he'd be like, this car will beat anybody. I put it in supercharge. And he put it in there. And then I had some other people drive it who had like Lexuses and stuff. They're like, this isn't fast.
That's right.
Like, I thought it was really fast.
That's right.
I was like, I guess it's not.
Yeah, dude. So that'll be, I think, participating, like, and they're going to complain, but you got to like make them contribute to the running of the household, kind of earn their keep a little bit.
Which I'll probably be the bad one at that because I'm just a sucker. I'm just be like,
I know. I am too. That's my wife hated it because she was like, and we had this interesting thing that I'll have to get my kids on one of these episodes and have them share their experience. But we had a thing as an alternative discipline. We had the chore cup, the consequence cup.
What's a consequence cup? I'm
So
interested.
it would have all these random chores in it, like clean the bathroom, dust the baseboards, mop the floors.
And was this like if you got in trouble?
Yeah, if you got in trouble. So we'd be like, all right, fine. Pull one item out of the consequence cup, like, oh. And like one of my daughters was telling me, she's like, what you guys don't know is that we would sneak in there and like I would fold an easy one a certain way. So like when you told me to pull it, I'd pull that one. It was like, put the dishes away. Like some
That's hilarious.
Little one. But anyway, I don't know. I think being mindful of it as a dad and as a parent team is the best thing you can do. And getting outside, man. Outside is the great equalizer.
Yeah. He loves being outside even as a little baby.
Yeah.
Like, he would just be crying.
And with the truck, have him like, and I'm sure you will. Yeah. And but have him help. He can wash the wheels. He can start. Yeah. He can start.
That's true. I should
getting engaged in like, hey, me and Dad are doing stuff together, and we're working on the truck. To him, that's like working on the truck. You know?
That'll be awesome. He'll remember that kind of stuff.
So it's good, man.
It's good. We kind of covered all kinds of different stuff. Healthcare. We solved healthcare.
We did.
I think we did. I don't know if we did. But
solved a parenting path that is unsolvable.
Scouts.
And I'll give you one more big piece of advice. Find people that you respect and get your kids around. Like I think of like these trips. Like I really want, like I love when, like I hope you and your wife and your babies will come on one of the trips in the future, because getting them around like I mean, he's a little old, but like just for example, it's one thing for like when your kid's like 3 or 4 for him to see Dad and like Dad's friends, but to see someone like Owen who's 14 or 15 doing cool stuff or like working hard, and then that's a powerful imprint on a young, especially a young dude.
That's someone closer to their age that they can kind of almost relate to.
Like
versus,
that next generation.
Yeah.
And I think of like, I believe in a practice of like generational kind of mentorship, where like I view like my kids mentor me in a lot of ways into like understanding culture and young people and the way they are processing life. And but I have people in my life that are that 10 to 15 year difference, and then like that 20 to 30 year old difference, like which would be like my parents' age, or I think that was always been really powerful in my life, having people that are like that 10 to 15 years ahead of me, because then it's like, as a young person, you could see the path, but if they're like 30 or 40 years older than you, it's kind of hard to like connect A to B.
How do I get there? Like, what are the in-between steps?
Yeah.
You need someone to kind of like, so you're not just leapfrogging to 30 years down the road.
Teaching them how to cook.
Yeah.
There's so many ways just to be engaged, and
I'm excited.
Good.
You know, like part of me is wish we would have done this sooner, but then part of me is like also like my wife and I are much more ready now than we were.
Right.
And I think it works different for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna be an old dad, but it's cool.
All right.
It'll be cool.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
They got stem cell now, so
I'll stay in shape, man.
Yeah, I know. I haven't worked out since we had this baby. I put on so much weight. I'm blaming it on COVID, but
that's the thing.
It's that pregnancy weight. I can't
so
shake it.
You're coming. Is this a true statement? You're coming to the Wyoming trip?
We are coming to the Wyoming. I'm
Mickey's
coming to the
gonna come
Wyoming.
again?
And my buddy Mickey, who's my partner in crime.
Get the gear back
The
out.
wife has given me the okay. We've got mother-in-law and father-in-law coming down to help with the baby. So, the gear stayed in my laundry room.
Yeah.
And I just moved it like a month ago. And I'm like, I'm just going to have to move it back in like 2 months to start going through it again. But I think what I was going to do is ship the truck up to you guys first to kind of look at it.
Yeah. Because that's tough. Like, because this trip, Moab was a long trip for you.
It was.
Because you're adding 2 to 3 days front and back.
Correct.
This Wyoming trip is 5 nights.
Okay.
So 5 to 6 days, 5 nights. So
that's from leaving Iowa.
That's from leaving Iowa.
Yeah.
Will be about 7 hours to get to the.
But it'll be cool because this one we're doing more camping, like legit.
Yeah, we're gonna be.
We stayed at like a campground.
Yeah, which
we
was
did a
fun.
couple camp nights, but it was campgrounds, which is nice to take a warm shower at the end.
Exactly. So we're trying to mix it up to like where we'll go 2 days BLM, like kind of rough camping, 1 night at a campground where we have showers, and then we'll mix it up.
We cheated a little bit on our trip and like did a couple of hotel nights on the way.
Yeah, I get
Wouldn't it be fancy if we just stayed in a hotel?
Right. So that's exciting. We'll keep you up to speed on that.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
Make sure you give Manny a follow on Instagram
at Scout 800.
At Scout 800. And
thank you very much.
Reach out to him. Ask him any medical questions.
Yeah, please.
Or Scout
flooded me with all kinds of back pain questions. I'd be happy to answer them. And thank you to Silver Bluff Brewery and my friend Kevin Coyle and his brother Jeff. And I think it's Allie. And they've all been awesome at setting this up for us.
Yeah,
so thank
super appreciative. If you're in the area,
come to Brunswick. Come to
Brunswick, man.
Silver Bluff Brewery. Check your local watering hole.
In 2022, meet up. Who's your buddy? 72 Bronco 76 Scout.
Jose is the awesomest guy. He is, quick tangent, one of the best Scout guys I met through Instagram.
Yeah,
he's a really good person, great family. Him and his wife, like, they sent us baby gifts when we had the baby the last time. They let us stay at their cabin in the mountains. We get to meet in person, and he's just been an awesome guy.
And
he's got 2 scouts.
2 scouts, and he's around this area. Like, how far away?
So he's got one of the green scouts that you guys built in Miami, and then he's got a Scout 800 that's green that he keeps in Blue Ridge Mountain.
Okay. So if we do a meet up here, we could coordinate with him.
Oh, yeah, we can get him up here. You're coming up here.
We were going to do the owners group trip around the Blue Ridge Mountain, but with COVID, and then it just got kind of like, it's like hard because a lot of our customers are like Texas and West Coast, and it was just hard to like.
We got to get you more customers on the East Coast.
Yeah, that's what we got to do.
So
they are growing. Like, we're doing some more in the Northeast.
Doing some East Coast stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Awesome.
everybody, thanks for listening. This is our longest podcast yet.
Is it really?
Hour 24.
Oh, crap.
That's
All right,
good. So thanks
Hope you
again
guys
for
are-
listening. Manny, thank you so much,
Thank you,
buddy.
Sean. I appreciate it.
And we'll talk to you guys next time.
Thank you.